Hey guys, welcome back for another video. We got a good one prepared today. We're moving on to our Week 12 college football picks for all of our 2024 Week 12 games. We're going to completely break the games down, look at the matchups, look the rosters over, and try to predict the outcome to the game. Who's going to win, who's going to lose, and what the final score will be. Make sure to hit that like button. Make sure to subscribe. If you have any comments about these games or any other ones, please drop them below, and I will respond. Every week, we go over every single college football game, the top 25 ones, the non-top 25 ones, and we also go over every NFL game as well, breaking down the money lines, the spreads, and the over-unders. If you're a football fan, if you are a sports fan, make sure to hit that like button. Make sure to subscribe to the channel so you can follow along with us. So this is all of our Week 12 top 25 matchups. The new poll is not out. The college football playoff poll comes out later tonight. So these rankings will be reflecting where we left off in Week 11. So if the numbers don't look right later this week, it's just because the poll came out after this video. But let's go ahead and get started running through these matchups. The very first one we have kicking everything off on Saturday, November 16th on Fox at 12 p.m. 4-5 Utah coming off of that really close loss to BYU. They'll be playing number 20 Colorado, 7-2. This is a Big 12 matchup. A lot of people had Utah potentially winning the Big 12, making the playoffs this season. Everything went awry. Cam Rising, as usual, goes down. They've had two backup quarterbacks that they've been shuffling back and forth. It's caused a lot of chaos on the offensive side for the Utes. Right now, Colorado, 75% chance to win this game. 10-point favorites. The over-under here is 47.5. Without Cam Rising, there's basically no Utah offense, but what they still have under Kyle Whittingham is an elite top 20 defense. Every single season, they are disciplined, they are physical, they do have a great running back. They're going to try to keep this game a one-possession game, try to dominate at the line of scrimmage. How does Colorado respond? Much improved over last season. Props to Deion Sanders. This team is rolling. They are throwing the ball with anyone. They don't have a great rushing attack, but that offensive line is a lot better than it was last year. But what about the defense? It's not a great defense, but it's a pretty decent defense. Much improved over last season. Right now, the Utes are averaging 22.6. Throwing for 225, running for 150.4, but that defense is still elite, giving up 17.1 points a game. Can they keep this game within a one possession? Can they force some potential turnovers here? And for Colorado, they're averaging 32.4, throwing for 345.2, running for 78.3, giving up 22.6 points a game. If you beat Utah, you have to outscore them. That's not going to be hard to do, but they're going to try to keep that game close, slow the game down, keep the ball on the ground. They have Bernard at the running back position. He's closing in on 900 yards on the ground. He also has a lot of touchdowns. He's going to be the mainstay. He's the X factor for the Utes. And they also have Singer there at the receiver position. But Colorado is loaded, a great wide receiver core. They have Shedeur Sanders closing in on 2,900 yards, 24 touchdowns, 6 picks. They have Travis Hunter. They have Horn, Webster, multiple weapons. Shepard at the wide receiver position. Too much talent here, too much firepower. Colorado continues their great start to the season. They win this one 28-20, but Utah's defense should somewhat keep it close first half. The next matchup we're looking at on the Big Ten Network at 12 p.m. Number 2 Ohio State Buckeyes 8-1 versus 4-5 Northwestern. Northwestern's having a pretty tough season. They're having issues getting first down, moving the ball, getting touchdowns. They have a decent defense, but that defense gets wore out. They're on the field the entire game. The Buckeyes are massive favorites here. 30-point favorites. They have a 95.4% chance to win this game. The over-under is 44.5. The Buckeyes have Indiana on the horizon. Once you get a big lead, pull your starters. You want to make sure to be fully healthy for that game. That's going to be a top 10 on top 10 matchup, and you potentially have that rematch with the Oregon Ducks in the Big Ten Championship. You want to make sure that you're rolling hot, but you want to make sure you're healthy. There's no reason to be running the score up here. You're already the number 2 team in the nation. Right now, the Buckeyes, obviously, one of the most talented rosters. The number 3 overall roster, they're led by Will Howard, closing in on 2,300 yards, 22 touchdowns, 5 picks. They're averaging 38.6 points a game. Throwing for 277.7. Running for 185. Their defense, number 2 in the nation. They only give up 250 yards per game, 10.7 points a game. The most talented defensive roster in the country right now. The offensive line has been holding up. There was a lot of question marks there, but they are keeping things under control, keeping Will Howard upright, and he also has his mobility factor there. For Northwestern, they're averaging 19.2, throwing for 185, running for 112, and that defense is giving up 21.9 points a game. The Buckeyes are loaded on the offensive side. Howard, one of the best 1-2 running back punches in the country. Junkins, Henderson, they have Smith, they have Egbuka. They should be able to cruise and dominate this game on both sides of the ball. The Buckeyes win it 37-10. Like I said, get your starters out early once you have the game under control. The next matchup we're looking at on ABC at 12 p.m. We have number 5 Texas Longhorns coming in here at 8-1. Everything is still in front of them. They can win out. They can still make the SEC championship. But this is an under-the-radar tough matchup. The 5-4 Arkansas Razorbacks. You don't want to sleep on Sam Pittman's team here. They have Bobby Petrino calling plays. You know they're going to be able to move the ball. Right now, the Longhorns, though, have an 85.8% chance to win this game. 13.5-point favorites. The over-under is 57.5. The Texas Longhorns, they have the number 4 overall roster. Steve Sarkisian's team is extremely talented. They have a top 10 offense. They have a top 10 defense, a top 5 defense, actually, and they're top 10 in quarterback pressures, top 10 in sacks. Right now, Texas, they are being led by Quinn Ewers. Even with the injuries, he's still having a great season, closing in on 1,800 yards, 19 touchdowns, 6 picks. And for Arkansas, they have Green when he's fully healthy, closing in on 2,300 yards, 11 touchdowns, 7 picks. Texas, they're averaging 38.9. They're throwing for 315. They're running for 164.1. But that defense is only giving up 12.1 points a game. They only give up about 260 to 265 yards of offense every single game. They make life difficult. They only give up 148 passing yards. If you want to beat Texas, it's going to have to be on the ground, and that's easier said than done. Right now, Arkansas, they're averaging 33 points a game, throwing for 310.1, running for 191.2. So they're averaging about 500 yards of offense. They can move the ball, and their defense is giving up 26.3 points per game. Texas's team is loaded. Ewers, Wisner, Helm, Bond. Bond had massive plays this past weekend. When he's fully healthy, he's like Worthy. He's a difference maker on this team. And for the Razorbacks, they have Jackson. They have Armstrong. Texas should be able to cruise here, but this is another team. You don't want to sleep on the Razorbacks. They are under the radar competitive, having a solid season so far. They're looking in touch of getting that bowl qualifying game. They want this win here. They want to welcome Texas to the SEC. This is an old rivalry matchup, but I have the Longhorns getting the win here, taking this one 37-20. The next matchup that we're moving on to at 12 p.m. on ESPN, number 23 Clemson, 7-2. Versus number 18, Pitt, 7-2. Pitt was undefeated. They dropped back-to-back games. They want to get things back on track here. Clemson, everything is still in front of you. With the Miami loss, you only have one conference loss. Now, Miami does have the tiebreaker because they beat Louisville. You lost to Louisville, but if Miami slips up again, you could still make that ACC championship. If you win it, you get the bye week, and you still make the playoffs. Right now, Clemson has a 59.1% chance to win this game. They are 10-point favorites. The over-under here is 54.5. Klubnik having a great season. Year 2 under Riley. The offense looks a lot better. Props to Dabo here. They still lack elite playmakers at the wide receiver position, but Klubnik having a good season. He's closing in on 2,300 yards, 24 touchdowns, 4 picks. But Holstein, the transfer from Alabama, is lighting it up for Pat Narduzzi's team here. New scheme, new offense. He's closing in on 2,200 yards, 17 touchdowns, 6 picks. Clemson, they average 37.7 points a game. They throw for 282.8. They run for 198.7. Very balanced offense, just shy of 500 total yards every game. And their defense is giving up 23.1 points a game. This isn't the Clemson defense of old where they gave up sub 15 points a game, but it's still a pretty decent defense, especially talent-wise, top 10 talent-wise, but not statistically so far this season. And for Pitt, they're averaging 36.7, throwing for 291.8, running for 150.7, and their defense is giving up 25.1 for Clemson. There's Klubnik, Maffa closing in on 1,000 yards, William closing in on 500 yards. Pitt, though, can match them blow for blow. They're going to keep this game close. Do not underestimate Pitt here. They have a very talented offensive squad. They have Holstein, Reed, Mumfield. I have Clemson pulling out the win in the fourth quarter, winning a close one here, 32-27. This next matchup, there's really not much to say. At 2 p.m. on the SEC Network, 9-1 Mercer, which is an FCS team, versus number 11 Alabama, 7-2. Bama has a 99% chance to win this game. There's no spread out yet because it's a FBS versus FCS matchup, so that won't come out till later this upcoming weekend. But we know Alabama is going to curb stomp them. Their defense has been playing well the last 2 weeks. This is kind of a dopey matchup because everybody else is playing conference foes, and Bama always schedules these FCS teams at the end of their schedule. Someone has to stop that. You should not be allowed to do that when everyone else is playing really tough games right now. But nonetheless, Mercer comes in. They're averaging 34.8, throwing for 234, running for 177, giving up 16.6 a game. Bama's cruising, especially Milroe running the ball, and their defense playing really good. The offensive line is getting better. That was a weakness so far this season. They weren't getting pushed there, but they're starting to own the line of scrimmage. They're averaging 38.1, and they're giving up 18 points a game, which is actually statistically the worst Bama defense since 2004. But it's still a top 30 defense. They have the playmakers, Milroe, Williams. Someone does have to step up as the number one running back, but Bama's going to have no problems here. I have them winning this one 44-10, getting those starters out early. And then on CBS at 3:30, number 6 Penn State 8-1. Everything's still in front of them. They only have a couple games left over. As long as they don't lose more than 2 games in their last 3 matchups, they're going to make the playoffs. A 10-2 team from the Big Ten will make the playoffs, and they're 8-1. They're probably going to finish the season 11-1. Worst case scenario, 10-2, and they are in. They have a 97.1% chance to win this game. They're going to be matched up versus 1-8 Purdue, who's pretty much the worst team in the Big Ten. Penn State 28.5 point favorites, massive spread. The over here is 50.5. Penn State, Drew Waller banged up, but they should control this game very easily. He's closing in on 2,100 yards, 13 touchdowns, 5 picks. Card closing in on 1,200 yards, 8 touchdowns, 5 picks. Penn State, they're averaging 31.2, throwing for 255, running for 196. One of the better 1-2 punches also, Allen, Singleton. They can run on anyone, and they're giving up 14 points a game. This is a top 10 defense. They are a physical defense. They're going to own that line of scrimmage. Purdue, they only average 18 a game, but they're giving up 37.8 points per game. There's going to be lots of opportunities here for Penn State to move the ball at will. I have them winning this one 44-7, winning it in dominating fashion. And then our typical Notre Dame versus ACC matchups here on NBC at 3:30. We have 5-4 Virginia having a pretty decent season for further standards for the way that they've been playing the last few years. They'll be playing number 10 Notre Dame 8-1. Notre Dame has a 95.9% chance to win this game. 23-point favorites. The over-under is 50.5. Virginia, not a bad team right now. They have Caldrea closing in on 2,000 yards, 12 touchdowns, 8 picks. They're averaging 26 points a game, throwing for 275.9, running for 143.8. They have a pretty decent offense, and they're giving up 26.7 points a game. But pretty decent offense isn't enough versus that top 10 Notre Dame defense. This is a really good defense. They have a lot of injuries on the offensive line, but they continue to chug. The big thing for them is they're hot at the right time. They're playing really good second half of this season. Freeman, Golden, Denbrock, a loaded coaching staff. They have Riley Leonard at the quarterback position. The guy can't throw to save his life, but what he can do is he's a mobile quarterback. He can scramble. He can run for first downs. When he needs to, the running game opens up that play action, and they have Love at the running back position. This is a great running team. They're averaging 38.3, throwing for 205, running for 215, only giving up 11.1 points a game. That defense is going to keep you in any game. Will keep every game as a one-possession matchup. As long as they don't drop one more, they will be making the playoffs. They have no conference championship, so there's no room for error with that one loss. But they are loaded right now, and they're hot at the right time. I have Notre Dame winning this game, and their defense feasting here. They win this one 38-17. And then on ESPN at 3:30, we have 5-4 Boston College. They got off to a really hot start this season. Coach is Bill O'Brien, but he is having to completely change this roster. Right now, Boston College are going to be playing number 13 SMU 8-1. I said preseason SMU should have been ranked to start the season in the top 25. No one thought that they were good. They're definitely thinking differently now. They might be playing Miami or Clemson in the ACC championship, their first season in the conference. Right now, SMU has a 87.1% chance to win this game. 16.5 point favorites. The over-under is 53.5. Boston College, Castellanos, the number 1 rushing quarterback in the conference last season, is closing in on 1,400 yards, 18 touchdowns, 5 picks. But Jennings stepping in for Stone has been lighting it up, passing and throwing the ball. He's having a great season filling in for Stone. Stone wasn't hitting it. Jennings stepped in, and this team completely took off. And they also have solid defensive play. Right now, Jennings closing on 2,000 yards, 12 touchdowns, 5 picks. Boston College, they average 27.6. They throw for 191.1. They run for 175.1. That defense gives up 23 points a game. SMU, they're averaging 40.1 points a game, a top 15 offense in the nation. They're throwing for 257. They're running for 196.6, a very balanced team, and they're only giving up 21.8 points a game, but only 90 yards on the ground. Boston College wants to establish the line of scrimmage. They want to run the ball. Very hard to run the ball on SMU. So SMU is going to look to make Boston College uncomfortable, force Castellanos to basically have to go vertical the whole game, which plays into SMU's favor. I have the Mustangs winning this one 40-23. And then on ABC at 3:30, we have number 15 LSU, 6-3, coming off of that loss this past weekend to Alabama. How does Brian Kelly and team respond? Nussmeier wants to have a massive game here. They have zero room for error. They're probably not going to make the playoffs right now. 3 losses is pretty hard to overcome. But if there's a lot of chaos, they want to continue winning these last couple of games. They'll be playing 4 and 5 Florida. Right now, LSU has a 57.4% chance to win this game. 4-point favorites. The over-under is 55.5. I honestly thought the spread would be higher, but maybe Vegas sees DJ Lagway coming back and that igniting the Florida offense. They were down to their 3rd-string quarterback this past weekend. Things are getting rough. Mertz, Lagway, Warner. Lagway might be back. He might be healthy this coming weekend. But if he plays, what version of him do we get? Is he kind of limited, or is he at 100%? Florida has been competitive versus good teams this season, but that schedule's rough. They're going to start to get wore out at this point of the season. They've had a brutal schedule. Right now for LSU, they're averaging 30.6. They're throwing for 328.9, running for 114. The defense under Blake Baker, better than last season, but still a lot of question marks. They're giving up 24.9 points a game. Florida, they're averaging 28.1. They throw for 242.4. They run for 151.1. That defense is giving up 27.6. Florida, to me, they're starting to backtrack. They're starting to go backwards. Things are starting to get out of hand. They will not be making a bowl this season, but maybe there's some outside chance that they could pull off an upset here. Looking at LSU, they have Nussmeier closing in on 2,900 yards, 21 touchdowns, 11 picks. They are banged up, but they are the better roster. They have the better wide receiver core. They should win this game. They should win it handedly, technically. I have LSU getting things back on track, winning this one 33-20. And then at 3:30 p.m. on the ACC network, number 22 Louisville coming off the bye, and they have a 6-3 record. They'll be playing 2-7 Stanford. Louisville has to take advantage of these easy wins, continue to pad that schedule. Right now they have a 91.2% chance to win this game. They are 20.5-point favorites. The over-under here is 58.5. Louisville, they're going to be led by Shaw, having a great season so far, closing in on 2,600 yards, 20 touchdowns, 5 picks. And for Stanford, they've been kind of shuffling quarterbacks, Daniels, Lampson. Still, they cannot get that offense going. Louisville, they're averaging 36.2, throwing for 298.4, running for 163.1. They're giving up 24.2 points a game. And for Stanford, they're averaging only 20.4 points a game, but they're giving up 34.6 every single game. That does not bode well versus a Louisville offense that is loaded. Jeff Brom, a great coach. He knows how to work the portal, but he adapts his scheme and play style to the talent he has on this team, and he has a lot of really good transfer players. He has Shaw, he has Brown, the freshman, closing in on 900 rushing yards. Brooks, the transfer from Alabama, closing in on 900 yards receiving. They should be able to dominate this game passing, running the ball, and on defense. Louisville wins 44-17. And then on the SEC network at 4:15 p.m., number 24 Missouri 7-2 versus South Carolina 6-3. We had Missouri upsetting the Sooners last weekend. We were right. We had the Gamecocks winning. We were right. When the polls come out, South Carolina should definitely be ranked. Shane Beamer knows how to pull off the upsets, but Missouri is a really tough team. Right now, South Carolina is the favorite, 69.6% chance to win this game. 11.5-point favorites. The over-under is 44.5. The big question for Mizzou, Will Cook be playing at the quarterback position? Yes, they did win without him, but obviously he takes this offense to a different level. He's closing in on 1,600 yards. He's the veteran, 7 touchdowns, 1 picks. And for South Carolina, Sellers and his mobility can make the difference. He's closing in on 1,500 yards, 9 touchdowns, 4 picks. Mizzou, they're averaging 28 a game, throwing for 229.2, running for 167.6. But it's that defense, a top 25 defense, giving up 18.4 points a game. Defense travels on the road. They will be bringing that defense to play the Gamecocks, but the Gamecocks will not be impressed. This is a just as talented team. They are loaded. They're averaging 30.2 points a game, throwing for 224.3, running for 180.7. Their defense is only giving up 17.6 points a game, only 107 on the ground. The Gamecocks are better on offense. They're better on defense. Their record should be better. They should have beat Bama, but they lost that game. They should have beat LSU. They lost that game. This could potentially be a playoff caliber South Carolina team. A couple things went the wrong way. Now they're 6-3, but still an extremely talented team. Props to Shane Beamer. Looking at Mizzou, they have a loaded roster. Cook, Noel, Weiss Jr., Burden. They have the veterans, they have the playmakers, but the Gamecocks have Sellers. They have Sanders at running back, Simon. I'm calling the Gamecocks to win this one, but it's going to be close because Mizzou does have a decent defense. Gamecocks win it, though, 28-20. And let's watch one of the best, if not the best player in all of college football on CBS at 7 p.m. Number 12, Boise State 8-1 versus San Diego State 6-3. Right now, Boise has a 83.3% chance to win this game. 13.5 point favorites. The over under here is 61.5. They have Ashton Jeanty. He is the secret weapon. He's the X factor for all of college football. The best running back by a mile, but they also have a really good passing game. Madsen closing in on 2,000 yards, 18 touchdowns, 3 picks, and he scrambles, and when he scrambles, the guy gets first downs. Gentry completely changes the game. He opens up the play action, and he also opens up the quarterback being able to run. Everyone's looking at Gentry. Right now, Boise, they're averaging 43.8 a game, throwing for 230.6, running for 268.6 yards per game. They're averaging over 500 yards of offense, a top 10 rushing team, but they can throw the ball, and their defense is giving up 25.1 a game. San Diego State, they have a pretty decent team. They have Brown closing in on 1,700 yards, 16 touchdowns, 5 picks. They average 28.8. They throw for 342. They run for 94.6. They give up 24.1. So they're averaging just under 350 passing yards per game. Boise does give up 277.3 through the air. So if Boise had a weakness, it's their secondary. San Jose State knows how to throw the ball, so they're going to look to attack them vertically through the air. But Boise has Gentry. They can control the clock. They can control the ground game. He's closing in on 1,800 yards. He has 24 touchdowns. Crazy video game numbers. Until I see someone stop him, I do not believe that it can be done. Boise rolls here. They win it 38-23. This next one is a fun Big 12 matchup at 7 p.m. on ESPN, 7-2 Arizona State. Props to Dillingham. He has a really good team here. They've come out of nowhere this season. Very competitive team, and they're prepped and prepared for the upset. They'll be playing number 19 Kansas State, 7-2. Right now, Kansas State 9-point favorites. The over-under is 50.5. That's a pretty big spread for a Big 12 matchup. Arizona State, the big question for them is, will Scattaboo be back at the running back position? That's the guy who tore Utah up on the ground. The physicality of Utah could not stop him. Kansas State does have a pretty decent rush defense. Will they be able to stop him if he does play? Right now for Arizona State, they have Levitt closing in on 1,700 yards, 14 touchdowns, 4 picks. In Kansas State, the highest recruited player in Kansas State history, Avery Johnson, closing in on 1,900 yards, 17 touchdowns, 7 picks. But it's what he can do with his legs. He can run. He's fast. And when he runs, he gets a first down every time. He runs with purpose. For the Sun Devils, they're averaging 31.6. Throwing for 213.6, running for 198, giving up 23.8. Kansas State, very well-coached team. They're averaging 31.2, throwing for 223, running for 208.3, giving up 21.7 points a game. These teams are practically identical. It's anyone's game. Kansas State and Arizona State are still outside chances to make the Big 12 championship. Things could still potentially go their way. They just both have to make sure to win out. But one more loss is going to take you out of the running for that. Kansas State does give up 254 passing yards, but you can only run for 99.4. That's half of what the Sun Devils run for every game. That's why the Sun Devils want Scotty back so bad. He's closing in on 1,100 yards on the ground. They also have Tyson. For Kansas State, They have a top 5 running back, DJ Giddens, closing in on 1,000 yards on the ground, and they also have Brown as the wide receiver. Whenever they need a big, deep vertical play, he makes it every single time. I have Kansas State winning this one, but it's going to be close. They win it 30-27. And then at 7:30 p.m. on NBC, number 1 Oregon Ducks, the unanimous number 1 team, 10-0 undefeated, 5-4 Wisconsin. Wisconsin, they don't have the best offense, but they do have a very physical defense. They've gotten back to Wisconsin Badger football, lining up, running the ball down your throat. Right now, Oregon, 75.6% chance to win this game. They are 14.5-point favorites. The over-under is 52.5. Them just like the Buckeyes. Things are setting up right now for you to make the Big Ten Championship. You only have 2 games left. You're going to make the Big Ten Championship more than likely. Make sure no one gets hurt. There's no reason to have anyone in their fourth quarter running the score up. You're already the number 1 team. There's nowhere else to go. Make sure you make it to the big game healthy. Right now, they're led by Dylan Gabriel having a great season, closing in on 2,900 yards, 22 touchdowns, 5 picks. He also has 6 rushing touchdowns. And for Wisconsin, TVD goes down. They have Locke closing in on 1,500 yards, 8 touchdowns, 8 picks. The Ducks average 35.7. They throw for 296.2. They run for 169.3. They're only giving up 16 points a game. A top 15 physical defense. This team's been built at the line of scrimmage. Wisconsin, they average 25.1. They throw for 210. They run for 173.7. They're giving up 21.4 points a game, which isn't bad considering they're on the field so much. But the Ducks have the playmakers. Gabriel, James closing in on 1,000 yards. Johnson, Stewart, a extremely talented team, a top 6 or 7 overall roster. Wisconsin, they're going to just try to run it at you with Walker. They have Anthony the second. They're going to try to dominate the time of possession, the line of scrimmage. That is easier said than done versus Oregon. I have the Ducks winning this one, getting those starters out starting the 4th. They win it 35-17. Now the game of the weekend on NBC at 7:30. We have the big matchup here. We're going to have Tennessee playing Georgia. This is at 7:30 ABC. Number 7 Tennessee 8-1. Coming off of their massive win here, they'll be playing number 3 Georgia 7-2. Like I said, the new poll hasn't come out. We know Georgia will be falling probably somewhere to 10-13, somewhere in there. But Georgia has 2 losses. Georgia has 2 SEC losses. One more loss, they will not be making the SEC championship, and they would probably get knocked out of the playoffs. Tennessee wants this big win here. Josh Heupel wants this win, but Georgia has a 61.7% chance to win this game. They are 10-point favorites. The over-under here is 48.5. Tennessee, Nico is finally starting to play some better football. This team was really struggling on offense in SEC play. The last 2 games, they've started to score some more points. They're starting to move the ball, but he is banged up. But as of right now, he will be playing come Saturday. And for Georgia, I don't know what's happened to Beck, but he did lose his 2 best playmakers this past season, so maybe this is just the Beck that it really is. He has a pretty sloppy season so far. In his last, I think, 3 or 4 games, he has 11 turnovers. Nico's closing in on 1,900 yards, 11 touchdowns, 4 picks. Beck closing in on 2,500 yards, 17 touchdowns, 12 picks. And the guy was fumbling the ball nonstop versus Ole Miss. I picked Ole Miss to win that game. I was not surprised at all. They dominated the game on both lines of scrimmage. Tennessee's defense is just as good as Ole Miss's defense. So are we going to see a repeat of that, or will we see the first half Texas matchup? Will that be the Bulldogs team that shows up? Right now, Tennessee, they're averaging 37.6, throwing for 245.2, running for 235.1. Probably the most balanced team in the country. They're only giving up 12.6 points a game. Top 10 in quarterback hurries, top 10 in sacks, top 10 in tackles for a loss. An extremely talented defense. Josh Heupel is an offensive guy, but the Volunteers have proven this season they can win games with their defense, and they get a lot of turnovers. They're only giving up 288 yards per game. Georgia, they're averaging 30.6. That's the lowest it's been in a while. Throwing for 298.3, running for 123.9, giving up 18.4 points a game. Georgia's strengths used to be their offensive line, their running game, their defense. The offensive line has had some holes here. It's had highs, it's had lows. Running game has not gotten going at all so far this season, and it's week 12. Defense, still a top 30 defense, but Georgia every season is always sub 15 points per game. That's not the case so far, but it's still good. But Tennessee's defense is better. Let's be honest. Let's call it what it is. They have the playmakers. They have Nico. They have Sampson closing in on 1,200 yards. He has 20 rushing touchdowns. They have Thornton Jr., Squirrel White, and Georgia. Beck, Smith, Etienne. They got to get the running game going. Georgia's the favorite. but I have Tennessee pulling the upset, winning this one 27-20 and knocking Georgia out of the running for the playoffs. And then on the SEC network at 7:45, 2-7 New Mexico State versus number 14 Texas A&M Aggies, sitting at 7-2. The Aggies have a 99% chance to win this game. Massive favorites here, 39.5-point favorites. The over-under here is 54.5. New Mexico State, they don't really do anything at all well. They average 20.6 points a game. They give up 37.1 points a game. That's awful on both sides. For the Aggies, they're averaging 30.9. They've been playing quarterback carousel. Wegman, and then they've been rolling with Reed. Reed is obviously the better option, and he has the added mobility factor. He's closing in on 900 yards, 7 touchdowns, 1 pick. They're averaging 30.9 points a game. Mike Elko has made this team in his image. They have 2 losses here. This is not a bad team. They are a physical team, especially at the line of scrimmage. They're throwing for 192.7, but they're built around running the ball. 213.3 every game, giving up 21.2. But they've lost Moss for the season. That's a massive loss there. He had 800 yards rushing, but this is a top 10 overall roster. They should cruise in this game no matter what. They win it 41-13. And our next matchup on Fox at 8 p.m., 5-4 Cincinnati. Don't sleep on Cincinnati. This is a team that can run the ball, they can throw the ball, they can be competitive, especially versus a reeling number 17 Iowa State, 7-2. Back-to-back losses here. We don't even know if Iowa State will be ranked when the college football playoff poll comes out, but they have a 70% chance to win this game. 9-point favorites. The over-under is 53.5. Cincinnati, they're going to be led by Sorsby, closing in on 2,400 yards, 16 touchdowns, 5 picks. And Iowa State, this is Matt Campbell's team. Disciplined, and they play defense, run the ball. But Becht having a good season, closing in on 2,400 yards, 16 touchdowns, 7 picks. The Bearcats average 28.6. They throw for 277.8. They run for 170.6. Their defense giving up 22.2. Iowa State needs to get things back on track. They cannot afford to lose one more. They need some chaos. They still have a chance to make the Big 12 championship, but they can't drop this one. If they fall out the top 25, getting the win here could potentially get them back in it. They're averaging 31.1, throwing for 279.3, running for 168.1, and their defense is giving up 18.8 per game. Cincinnati, though, like I said, they can move the ball. Sorsby, Kiner, Henderson, pretty decent playmakers there, but Iowa State, Becht, Hansen, Noel closing in on 900 yards. They need to get it back on track. They need this game bad. Cincinnati wants to kick them while they're down, but I have Iowa State getting back in the win column, winning at 33-20. And our second to last game, it's a late one at 9:30 p.m. on Fox Sports 1. Number 21 Washington State 8-1 versus 4-6 New Mexico Lobos. This game's going to be an interesting one because it's a potential upset game because they can actually move the ball. But right now, Washington State has an 82.4% chance to win this game. 13-point favorites. The over-under here is 72.5. That is massive. Vegas sees a lot of points here. We know Washington can score. They have Mateer closing in on 2,400 yards, 22 touchdowns, 6 picks, but he can also run the ball. They're averaging 39.3. They're throwing for 288.2, running for 183.3, giving up 27 points a game. They give up just shy of 275 passing yards, 160 rushing yards. They don't have the best defense, but they can match you blow for blow on offense. And the Lobos, they average 33.4, throwing for 243.9, running for 237.8. They can move the ball on the ground, but that defense, one of the worst in the nation, giving up 38.3 every single game. This game could be a shootout, could come down to that final possession. Cougars should be able to seize it. Mateer closing in on 700 yards on the ground, 33 total touchdowns. They have Williams. I have them winning this game, but I'm going to keep my eye on it because if the offense is just slightly off, their defense might not be able to stop the Lobos. But still, Washington State wins it 38-27. And finally, our final game of the weekend, 10:15 on ESPN, 3-6 Kansas. Kansas, a lot of people picked them to win the Big 12. They completely fell off the rails. But they've actually been really competitive the last few weeks. We know they have talent. Maybe they're starting to realize that, but they have to win out to get a bowl game. They'll be playing number 9 BYU, 9-0 undefeated. I have them on upset alert here. Right now, BYU has a 60.9% chance to win this game, 3-point favorites. The over-under here is 55.5. Kansas. Daniels was finally healthy. He was supposed to lead this team to a Big 12 championship, or at least the Big 12 game. Yeah, he's had an awful season, closing in on 1,900 yards, 13 touchdowns, 9 picks. Playing better as of late, though. They can move the ball. They can't stop anyone, but they've cut the turnovers down. That's what's kept this team down this season. They're averaging 31.7. Throwing for 214.9, running for 214.4. Very, very balanced. They're giving up 25.9 every game. And for BYU, they have Retzlaff. Great quarterback, closing in on 2,100 yards, 18 touchdowns, 7 picks. They had that solid win versus Utah this past weekend. That was a close one. That was a potential upset game. They seized it in the end, but BYU lives off the turnovers. If they don't get turnovers, the offense does have issues consistently moving the ball. Kansas has had a lot of turnovers this season. They could give BYU an easy victory, but if Kansas State cuts those turnovers down, there's the potential for the upset. They're averaging 33.7, throwing for 247, running for 163, giving up 19.8 every game. Kansas has Daniels. They have Neal, a top 10 running back, closing in on 900 yards on the ground. They have Grimm. BYU has Martin, Roberts. I have BYU winning this one, but I think it's going to be close. They win it 28-24, but this game makes me uncomfortable. Keep your eye on it. I don't want to go anywhere near this game because, like I said, I see upset alert potential. So that's our breakdown. That's our predictions for all of our ranked top 25 Week 12 matchups. Make sure to hit that like button. Make sure to subscribe. If you have any comments, please drop them below and I will respond. Thank you.